blackboard afterward. And I'm going to present to your screen now, I hope. And let me project something here to your screen. All right. And you will have to tell me if you're seeing what I hope you're going to be seeing here. All right. Hang on just a second here. It'll help me if I can see what's going on here a little bit. There we go. Let me go back to that. All right, so are you guys now seeing a PowerPoint that says blocks on it? Looks like you are, yeah. Okay, good. So I just wanted to first off throw the word out in case you weren't sure what I was saying there, that blocks is a term that was another one of those terms that was made up by AutoCAD. And before blocks came along, and before CAD came along, what blocks were essentially were templates that were used in architecture, mechanical, or electrical that had symbols on them like doors or bathtubs or resistors if it was electrical, things like that. And then as CAD came along, I guess they needed a term to describe what had essentially been templates before. And so AutoCAD came up with this term blocks. And I don't know where it really came from, except I guess the best way that I would maybe think they came up with a block is that when you take a group of objects and you combine them to make a symbol, they all come together into one object. And maybe that's what they were calling it. You were blocking that object. I don't know. But anyway, so here's an example of a block right here, something that you might block. This is a 3-0 door. So it's 3 feet wide, 0 inches, 3 feet 0. And so when you draw this door, you're going to draw it where that distance right there would be 3 feet or 36 inches. And when you draw the vertical part of your door, this part right here, you would draw it also at 36 inches. And then you would do this arc in here, and the radius of that arc would be 36 inches. All right. And so then what you could do, you could turn this into a block, which means that you would have a 3-0 door symbol that you could use over and over again. You could even use it over again in other drawings as well. So the advantage of blocks is that if you create a symbol once, you can use it as many times as you need to without having to redraw it. And so that's really what a block is. Now, when you make a block, and when we look at this block right here, one of the things we're asked about the block is to define a base point. You can see the base point right here. And what I want you to think of the base point as is it's the handle for your block. And so if you had to move this door into a floor plan, you would want to make sure that you had a handle on that door that would make sense for placing it inside of a floor plan. So I'm going to draw, let's say we have a wall right here, and here's the other side of the opening of the wall over here. So we cut out an opening for a door in here. If I were going to place a door and have the door like this and the swing come in this direction right here, a really good place to have the base point for that door would be right here in this corner where the door joins the wall at what we call the hinge jamb, right? Because the hinge jamb, which the hinge side of the door, and I'm writing with my mouse so it's not too nice here, but I'm working at it. Hinge jamb, all right? So this point right here that this arrow is pointing to, that you have right here, that corner, that lower left corner of the door could make a good base point if you were making that into a block. So we're going to talk some more about that as we go along. So when you create a block, there's a tool, there's an icon that you pick on, and there's two actual terms for making a block. There's the create a block command, which I'll show you in AutoCAD, and there's also one called make block. And so rather than read through all this stuff, because you can read all of this kind of stuff in the book, I'm going to just show you. When you place a block, though, into a drawing, the command is called insert block or just insert. People will say just use the insert command to put that in. And so there's actually a tab on your ribbon that has a bunch of insert tools on it. And so I'm going to get into that as well. Now, when you need to edit a block after you've made one, if you double click on it, if you double click on a block, just like with text, it's going to take you into what's called the block editor. And once you're inside the block editor, you can make changes to your block, and then you can save the block with the same name, or you could give it a new name. So if you want to create a new block by starting with an old block, you can do that just by giving it a new name. Here's the thing about when you double click on a block and you make edits to it though, if you save it with the same name, if you've already put a bunch of those blocks into your drawing, all of those blocks are going to update and they're going to show the changes that you've made. So if you don't want that to happen, you need to save your block with a new name after you edit it. But, on the other hand, if you know you want to update all the blocks, it's a good thing. All right. And so another thing that is a consideration of making a block, and I want to be sure that I mention this to you, is making your blocks on layer 0. Okay. So, 0 is the layer that AutoCAD gives you. And if you make your blocks on layer 0, they're probably going to look white and continuous line, whatever the properties of layer 0 are. But it actually matters that you made them on layer 0, and here's how it matters. If you take a block that you made on layer 0 and you inserted it onto the hidden layer, for example, and the hidden layer had dashed lines and was blue, then your block would, as it was entered into the hidden layer, would turn blue and would have dashed lines. So the point of this is that if you make your blocks on layer 0, they are going to adapt to the layer that they're inserted on. And that's something that's kind of big to know, because you could want that to happen or you might not want that to happen. If you don't want it to happen, what you do is make your blocks on a different layer, a layer other than 0, and when you do that, they will retain the properties of the layer they were made on. Okay, so let's say you made a block on layer 0 and it was red, continuous lines. That's what they would always be, regardless of which layer you inserted that block onto. All right, so we'll get into that a little bit more, and that's why the book is good, because it covers all the things that I've said, except it'll make a little more sense to you. All right, so if you have your textbook, I would look on page 274, and what you're going to see there is the guest cottage that you drew in chapter 4 and that you dimensioned in chapter 6. Except what's going to happen now is we're going to add a ceiling fan to this. We're going to add a bathtub, a toilet, a sink, some lights, some switches, some 120 volt outlets. And when we're done with this, you're going to print it as a PDF and send it to me for a grade. And so finally, this project is going to be graded. And when I grade it, I'm going to be looking at everything you did in chapter 4, chapter 6, and now chapter 9. So I'm going to be looking at your geometry, which means did you draw it correctly in chapter 4? Your dimensions, did you dimension it correctly in chapter 6? And finally, did you put your blocks in correctly that we're doing in chapter 9? All right, so on my slide here, I have an elevation view of the guest cottage. And I think you may have seen a little image like this. This is just a concept for what this little place might have looked like. And so we have a window right here that is 2 feet 6 by 5 feet. And you have 3 of those in a row, right? And then you have one over here on the side of the house, and all of those are labeled A. That's window A. Over here in the back, you have a window that's 2 feet wide by 2 feet high. It's a smaller window, and that's in the bathroom. And it's labeled as B. And if you recall on this drawing, we had a window schedule, and it says what type of windows the A windows are, and what type of windows the B, and what the sizes are. And what it says, for example, on window B, it says that it's a 2.0 by 2.0. So the first 2.0 is its width, and the second 2.0 is its height. But you don't see the height on the floor plan, right? So you have to imagine that if we were going to later draw the elevation, that's where we're going to see the heights of those windows there. And so this is something we didn't talk about back in chapter 4 that I just want to bring up to you as we get further into these architectural type projects, because if you choose to do the architectural capstone that's coming up later, then you're going to draw a floor plan for a house. It's actually a cabin, and then you're also going to draw the elevations of it. And in the elevations, you're going to have to locate all your windows and doors and everything. And the elevation for your doors and windows all comes off of your floor plan. I mean, that tells you where to put everything. So I'm just trying to kind of relate all this to that capstone project that you have coming up later. All right, so what it says in the assignment here is to open the guest cottage and make 3 new layers: plumbing, electric, and wiring, and to assign a color to each layer. And on the wiring layer, set the line type to phantom. And a phantom line looks like this. It's a long line, and then it has 2 short dashes, and then it has a long line. And so we can see these lines right here are actually going to be drawn as phantom lines. And what those lines represent is that when you turn on the switch, which is this little S here on the wall that looks like that, you can see there's 3 switches in a row right there. When you turn on that switch, 2 of those switches actually go to the ceiling fan, and that's what this is showing the electrician. Okay, so if anybody has any questions or anything as I'm going along here, feel free to ask about that. But I'm going to also get into the AutoCAD part of this in just a second. All right, so when you start to draw this project, there is a video, and a lot of this is going to be re-explained in the video, and I think that's going to be helpful. But if you look at the top of page 375, in step 2, it says draw the tub. So you're actually going to draw a bathtub, and then then you're going to make a block out of it. And then in step 4, you're going to draw the lavatory, which is the sink, and you're going to add an ellipse in there in the sink. And you're going to make a block out of that in step 5. And then in step 6, you're going to draw a toilet. All right. So this is, you're probably the only students at Austin Community College who will get a chance to draw a toilet and think much about a toilet this entire semester. But it's still better than taking Calculus 3. So I'm going to show you how to draw that here in just a second, and then you're going to draw a ceiling fan. And in the ceiling fan, you're going to use the array command. You remember the array command. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a circle, and you're going to draw one of the paddles of the fan, and then you're going to use the array command to array that paddle 5 times around that center thing there, and you're going to turn this into a block. So you're going to get a chance to make a ceiling fan, and there are step-by-step instructions in the chapter, and then they're also covered in the video. So you're going to have lots of support as you go through this. And it really doesn't take too long to draw this thing. Now, there's one other thing. I'm going to discard these guys for a second. I want to show you, if you go into Blackboard and you scroll down to Chapter 9 and you click on that, there is a PDF that talks about creating and adding blocks to AutoCAD drawings, and there's also a reading assignment, which is really just to read the chapter. It's only 6 pages long, but after what I've talked about today, it's going to make a lot more sense. There's even a video on an introduction to blocks, walk you through making blocks. And then it gets down into the required assignments, which is projects 9.1 and 9.2. Now I didn't show you 9.2 yet because I'm really not going to assign it today. I'm going to talk about it on Tuesday of next week, is the plan anyway. And so project 9.1 is just to draw the blocks for the guest cottage and save those. And so when you click on the assignment folder for this, which is assignment 1, it's going to bring you over here, and it refers you to the pages in the book. It tells you about making those layers. And then there is a guest cottage blocks video. And I recommend watching that video as you draw this. Okay, so I'm going to open AutoCAD. And let me make sure I'm in the right one. All right, here we go. Okay, so if you guys are not seeing AutoCAD right now, let me know. But I think you are. Let me click on something, just see if I can. Yeah, it looks like you are. I can see on my other screen, I can see what you're supposed to be seeing. Okay, so let's look at the guest cottage. So one of the first things we're going to place is a bathtub right in here. And when you first drew this, what you did is you drew this back line right here, and you offset that line 5 feet 4 inches. And that's what gave you this edge right here. And so because this wall is 4 inches thick, then the opening that we have from the inside wall to the inside wall right here on this bath is 5 feet. And common bathtubs are 5 feet long. Now custom bathtubs come in different sizes. And so you have to draw your walls accordingly. You know, if you want to put a 6-foot tub in there, you're going to have to draw a larger bathroom. But we knew we were going to put a 5-foot tub in here, and so that's why we offset that 5 feet. So the tub is going to fit here. The toilet is going to be lined up on this window and be placed underneath that window. And the sink will be over here in this corner. And then we'll have some wall switches and some lights that are mounted on the wall. So first thing I want to show you about is drawing the tub. So I'm going to go make layer 0 my current layer, and because I'm going to draw the tub on layer 0. And the way you're going to draw the tub is pick on the rectangle command, and when it asks you to specify the first corner, just pick a point and then move your cursor in that direction there. Now the width of the tub is 2 feet 6, and the height of the tub is 5 feet. So I'm going to type 2 and place a foot mark in there, 2 foot 6. I don't have to put inch marks on because AutoCAD defaults to inches. So I've got 2 feet 6, and remember also we have architectural units set for this. And then I'm going to type a comma. So 2 feet 6, that's the width, comma. And then I'm going to type 5 feet with a foot mark and press enter. And it draws the outside of the bathtub. All right. Then what we're going to do is come in and use the offset command, and we're going to specify an offset distance of 4, which is 4 inches, and press enter. And then we're going to pick the tub and pick anywhere inside the tub. All right. And the next thing we're going to do, and this is all following the directions at the top of page 275, is we're going to use the fillet command, and we're going to round the corners of the inside of the tub. And so when I pick on the fillet command up here, the first radius that I'm going to use is going to be 6 inches. So I'm going to come right down here and pick on the word radius. Now, I could just type R and press enter if I wanted to, but I'm going to pick on radius. And when it asks for the fillet radius, I'm going to type 6 and press enter. And I'm going to pick this corner here and this corner. And that fillets the back of the tub. And then if you just press enter, it's going to bring you back to the fillet command, and it remembers the 6-inch radius that you have set right there. Now I'm going to press enter again, which will bring me back to the fillet command, but this time I'm going to come back down here and pick on radius again, because I'm going to change the radius to 2. I'm going to type 2 and enter, and I'm going to pick at this corner and pick at that corner, press enter again, and pick here and pick there. And at that point, my tub is done. Now, you could make the tub fancier. You could come down here and acquire that point and come up, and you could draw the drain. And you could even draw a faucet, and you could draw the faucets down here. So the point of that, once you put the drain, and once you have these larger radii on there, you've really oriented the tub so that now you know, probably anyway, depending on how you use a tub, your feet probably go down here and your back is going to be here. So there's an orientation to the tub, and that's important because, you know, the designer has something in mind about where they want your feet or your back or whatever, and so we want to be careful about that when we make the block that's going to go in here. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to make a block out of this. Right over here, you have a block panel, okay, and the very top icon right there says create. Okay, that will work to make this block. The other option you have is to go right over, let me get this guy to wake up. This is my draw toolbar. Right here you have that tool called make block. It's the same thing, it even looks the same. For some reason it's called make block over here, but when you go here and park on it, it's called create. All right, so I'm going to pick on create, and when you do that, it's going to open up a dialog box that says block definition, and the first thing it wants is a name. So I'm going to type tub 34, and I just am making up that 34. Actually, let me call it tub 30. I may already have one because it's 30 inches wide. Okay, tub 30. Now, the next thing I want to choose is the base point for the tub, and as I was saying earlier, the base point's like a handle that you're going to use to place the tub into the house. And what you want to do is pick on this button right here that says pick point, because that allows you to pick a point for your base point. So I'm going to pick on that, and I'm going to go to this corner right here. I could choose this corner, I could choose the midpoint. It just depends on what I think would be a good handle for this block, but I'm going to use that corner right there. Okay, so that reopens my block definition. And objects, now it wants me to select all the objects that are going to be in my block, and so I'm going to pick on this icon right here that says select objects. So pick right there. What I would do is just pick out here in space and then let go and just window everything like that. And I'm still in the select object, so to tell AutoCAD I'm finished selecting objects, I need to press enter. All right. Now, the last thing I want to look at, it's called behavior, and there's some different things I can check, but for right now, the only one I'm going to check is allow exploding. And this is important because a block, like I said, it groups all these things together, and so it's hard to edit without exploding. Unless you use the block editor, so you can double click on a block and then you can go make these changes, but sometimes you have to explode a block and just remove something or change something about it. So there's a difference between exploding a block and making changes to the lines and stuff that are left behind versus doing a block edit. So I'm going to have allow exploding done, and then I'm going to pick OK. All right, now you see how that's acting like one entity when I pick on it? But here's the deal. You really aren't going to use this one. You've turned that into a block. And if you go to Insert Block, which is this icon right here, AutoCAD is going to show you all of the block symbols that you have. And this is the block symbol that you just made right here, tub 30. So if you pick on tub 30, you can see that I'm dragging tub 30 by its insertion point. So I would zoom into the bathroom, and I would pick at that corner right there. And at this point, when you place your tub in there, if your tub is coming into this wall right here, then either you drew your bathroom too narrow or you drew your tub too tall. It's just a clue for you, because it should fit exactly from wall to wall like it does there. Okay, so if I go back to my insert command, and let me drag this over if I can. Again, I have 3 blocks that are in this drawing, and one is tub 30, and there it is again. I can drag that guy around. Now I want to show you something about it though. Once I pick insert and it opens up this panel that I get right here, if I highlight tub 30 and I come right down here where it says rotation and I type 90, for example, and then I pick on tub 30 and I drag it in, look what happens. It rotated 90 degrees relative to my insertion point. So it rotated counterclockwise 90 degrees. So if you need to change the angle or the orientation of something, all you need to do is that when you pick on it, especially if you pick on it over here, it's going to open up this panel. You just choose that and then come down here and you can change its rotation. The zero rotation was the angle it was at when it was first made. So I've got a wall outlet. This is a 120 volt outlet and it says it's at 90 degrees. So I'm going to drag it in and let's see what that looks like. So when it's at 90 degrees, the outlet is pointing straight up like that. And so if I were going to put that on this wall, I might drag it over here and just place it like that. And that would represent a 120 volt wall outlet. Okay. The other block that we have in here is called a switch, and I'm going to drag it in. You can see it's coming in sideways, and I don't need a sideways switch. I need all the switches pointing up. So I'm going to go in here and change this to 0. And let's see what we get when we do that. There we go. That's what I want my switch to look like, is that right there. So I'm going to mount it like on that wall right there. So there's a switch. Actually, I'm going to need 3 switches, pardon me, on that wall. So I've drag another one in and drag another one in, put it at the midpoint there, and then drag this guy down and put it there. Now, once they're in place, you can move them, and you may have to turn your snap off just for a second while you move those things. But you'd want to have ortho on, get them moved into position. All right. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Up here, like I said, you're going to put a toilet on this wall right up here. And let me erase this guy out. When you draw the toilet, the dimensions for it are on page 376. And it starts by drawing the tank for the toilet, which is 1'8" by 6 inches. And so if you pick on the rectangle command and you pick and you type 1'8", comma, and then 6 and enter, you have your tank. All right. And the tank, the way we have it drawn, has square corners. And so I usually make mine a little bit fancier. I go to the Fillet command and I pick on radius, and I'm going to set the radius to 1. And then I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to, after I do that, press enter. I'm going to come pick on multiple. See right here, multiple. And what that does is it keeps me in the fillet command. I don't have to keep pressing enter to come back to the fillet command. So when I know I'm going to do multiple fillets, I can choose them for multiple like that. And then I can press escape. So there's my tank with a little nicer, has rounded corners on it. The next thing I'm going to do is draw a line. I've got to turn Object Snap back on from the midpoint here, and I'm actually going to draw a line that's 1'8" and press enter. And the reason I drew this line right here is the toilet bowl is going to be centered at the end point of that line right there. And to draw that, I'm going to use the Ellipse command, which is right here. So when you pick on Ellipse, you are prompted, it says specify the axis endpoint. So I'm going to pick right here, I'm going to show you what's happening there, is that when you pick the axis endpoint, it's like that's how long that ellipse is going to be. And it tells you in the directions there that ellipse is 1'8". So you type 1'8" and you enter. And what it does is it draws an ellipse that's 1'8" on the vertical axis or the y-axis. Okay, now you want to know how wide is the toilet bowl going to be. And the book says it's 1'4" wide. So that's 12 inches plus 4 inches, so that's 16 inches wide. But look at the dimension that it's giving me on my ellipse. Okay, so you can see that what it's showing me is only half the width of that ellipse. So I know that that toilet, when it's drawn, I want that bowl to be 1 foot 4 inches wide, which is 16 inches. But I have to cut that in half, and that's what I need to type in here. This is what confuses students and everybody about using the ellipse command is the first dimension you give will define the height of it, but the second dimension defines the width of the ellipse, but you only give half of that. So I'm going to type 8 and press enter. And so there is my toilet, and if I were to dimension it, you would see that it is about, oh, it went to the center point. It's 1 foot 8 inches this way, and from here to here, it should be 1 foot 4 inches. All right. So let me see if I can get this guy to, there we go. There's the 1.8 by 1.4. So let me get rid of those. So what I would do next is just pick on that, grab it at the center and move it to the end point of that line, and then press escape and get rid of this line. Just delete that line out. Okay. Then I would make a block out of that. So I would come over here to create block. It's going to come over here. I would call it toilet. I call it 30. And base point. Now, where should the base point of the toilet be? What I would do is go to the tank and just park there for a second. Don't pick. And then move straight up and type 2. And then I would pick right there. Let's see if I can get that to pick. Okay. That's going to open this guy up. And then I would go back to my objects. I would pick select objects, and I would pick all of that and enter. Allow exploding, and I would pick OK. So there it is. Oh, looks like my base point didn't go in exactly where I wanted it to. So when you go to insert over here, I would go to toilet 30, and I would mount it right there. Yeah, so my base point went in up and to the right for some reason. So this is an opportunity. You could double click on this and pick OK, and you can go into your block editor here, and you can actually, using the tools here, you can move where your base point is going to be. And so these are just things that, you know, this is how you edit a block. Just double click on it, and when you do, it's going to go into this gray area like this right here. And some of the different things you have up here, you can use save block as, which is if you're going to change the name of a block. If you just do save block, it's going to give it the same name. And you have some different options up here that you can do, like, you know, just this is worth going through, I think, just looking at all of the options that you have, and also some of the videos, because I'm not going to get into this right now and all of the different things you can do to this guy, but you can do a lot of different changes to your block here. And so insertion point, you can change your insertion point. I really should have that in the middle, in the center, and then up 2 inches. The reason for that, and why I like to place that 2 inches above it, is this. I'm going to close the block editor. I'm not going to save my changes. Let's see what it says. Discard the changes. Is that what I like to do is I want to mount this toilet right on, I want to center it on the window, and I want to bring it 2 inches off the wall, because toilets are not mounted on the wall. Okay. So the other thing you could do here is you could do an explode, and you can explode the toilet, and now it's separate parts again. And so if you wanted, you could reblock it and give it a new name right here and then center it on here. Or you could just grab the whole thing and move it from here and center it on the window, and then do a move command and grab everything and pick, and with ortho on, move straight down 2. Let me make sure ortho's on. There we go. Type 2 and enter and bring that off the wall. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you guys, and then I'm going to let you go and go to work on this, is what we're going to place on here, we're going to draw that ceiling fan and we're going to place it right in here. And so I don't have a ceiling fan drawn, so I'm just going to draw a circle to represent my ceiling fan. And because I want to show you about running those lines that tell the electrician where the switches are. And so you can actually see those lines at the bottom of page 378. There's an example showing you where the wiring is in this project. All right. And so what I would do is set my wiring layer current. So you're going to have made a wiring layer. And the wiring layer has a phantom line assigned to it. And the way you're going to draw the line that connects to here is you're going to use this command right here. This is called the Spline Command. Okay, that guy right there looks like a snake or something. You're going to pick on Spline, and it says specify the first point, and I would snap to the end point of that switch. Then I want to turn F8 off because I want to be able to move wherever I want to go and not just move orthogonally. So I'm going to come over here and pick once there, and I'm going to keep moving, and you can see that my line is starting to curve. So I'm going to pick again, and I'm going to pick a third time, like right there. And then I'm going to press enter. All right. So this is a spline, and it's drawn from the switch to the ceiling fan, and it tells the electrician, okay, that third switch should be wired to the ceiling fan. Now, it might go to the light if you have a light kit on the ceiling fan, or it might just go to turn the ceiling fan on. So you would pick the spline command again, and this time what you're going to do after you pick on the spline command is you're going to snap to the endpoint right here, and we don't want these lines to overlap, so you're going to pick out here, pick there, maybe pick in here, and then pick, like, let's say we go to the top right there for just, oh, I pressed escape, got out of it. So let me press enter, go to the spline command again. The point is that wherever you pick, that influences the curve of the spline, and then you press enter. Now you can see I've got these guys overlapping each other. If I drag this down here and I pick on this guy and I pick on that, I can change the direction of things by picking on the grip. And so the spline is really a cool command, and it's good, if you have to draw a graph or something on the job and you're trying to graph data, the spline is really, really good for that. Okay, so I wanted to show you that, and then the long line and the two short lines, this is what a phantom line looks like, and that's what your splines should look like on that. All right, so whenever you opened the prototype back in chapter 4 to draw the guest cottage, you didn't realize it, but there was already an outlet and there was already a switch block in that prototype. So normally what you would do is you would create a prototype that had like 100 symbols in it. And then every time you were getting ready to draw a floor plan, you would just open up that prototype and save it with the name of the floor plan you wanted. And then when you went to insert, you would have all of the blocks that you had already made. And so that's the way they do it at a company. And but there's something I want to show you about the outlet that goes in the bathroom. If you look, you can either look at the bottom of page 378, look in the bathroom and look at the outlet, or you can look on page 374 and look in the bathroom and look at the outlet. And you're going to see the letters GFCI. Okay, so what's going on there is this. Whenever you have an electrical outlet near a water source like a sink, you have to put a special type of outlet in there by code. And the code says what you need to have here is what's called a GFCI, a ground fault circuit interrupt. Okay, ground fault circuit interrupt. That's what the GFCI stands for. So if you pick on this and you draw a little box there, GFCI, you're going to have to label that outlet as a GFCI, and I'm going to go up here and change the height of that to 4 and press enter, and then close my text editor. Okay, so whenever you place that outlet in the bathroom, be sure and put GFCI next to it. Now, the outlets that you have in the living room, they don't have to be ground fault circuit interrupt outlets because there's not water associated with the living room. The reason why we're worried about the water is this: if you've got a sink right here and you run the sink full of water and you drop your hair dryer into that water, it could short out your hair dryer, and it makes it a hazard to somebody standing there. A ground fault circuit interrupt outlet is one of those outlets that you've seen, especially in bathrooms and kitchens, and it's an outlet, and it has 2 little buttons on it, and one says test and one says reset. A ground fault circuit interrupt, when that circuit is shorted out, should break the circuit, and so no one gets electrocuted. That's the whole point of having a ground fault circuit interrupt. The other reason why you don't want to have ground fault circuit interrupts everywhere else is they cost a lot more than a regular outlet does. A normal outlet you can buy for like $1.50 if you're going cheap, but a ground fault circuit interrupt may run you anywhere from like $8 to $12. I mean, go to Home Depot and go find ground fault circuit interrupts, and you'll see. Now, whenever you draw a floor plan and you put all your 120 volt outlets in, and you can see all the outlets on page 378 or on page 374, and when I grade this drawing, I'm going to be looking for every one of those outlets, okay? So be sure that you get all your 120 volt outlets in. Whenever you draw those and on an actual job and you send your floor plan to the electrician for a bid, if you did not put a GFCI in, when the electrician gets back to you, they're probably going to say, hey, you didn't put a GFCI in the bathroom, but you're going to have one, because the electricians know what the code is. And the other reason is they charge you more money to install a GFCI, so they're likely not going to miss that, okay? They get more money for installing one of these than they get for installing just a normal 120 volt outlet, okay? So what we're going to do is place 120 volt outlets on all of the walls, and we'll have that one in here next to the sink. Usually you keep that outlet away from the bathtub. That's, I guess, where it's the most danger, if somebody were in the tub and the hair dryer fell into the tub, or if you were drying your hair in the tub, which might not be a good idea. The other thing is in the closet, if you look on page 378 or 374, you can see that there is a light, and it's an overhead light. It's just mounted right here in the center, and it has a switch and a switch line running to it. But to contrast that, on this wall right here, if you look on page 374, 378, you can see that there are 2 lights, and they're mounted on the wall. So these would be lights like above the mirror over that vanity sink. Okay, so that's some of the differences and things. So when you're finished with this project, let me pick on this right here. This is what it should look like. So there's everything that you're going to have in the bath. This is your closet. There's that overhead light. These are those lights on the wall. Got 2 of those. And you can see there's a spline here that's running from this switch, but there's also a spline here. So what that tells the electrician is that when you flip this switch, both of these lights need to come on right here, okay? And again, just from the point of view of design, you wouldn't want this switch to be behind the door, right? Makes it a little inconvenient for people. Here is that ceiling fan. Here are all those 120 volt outlets. Here are the 3 switches that you're going to have. And let's see, I think that's about it as far as blocks go. Okay, so when you print this, it should have your window schedule, should have your title block completely filled out, and the scale should say 1/4 inch equals 1 foot dash 0 inches. Okay, you need to have 1 foot 0 inches in there. 1/4 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. Then over here, be sure that you include this note right here that the wall thickness is 4 inches, because we have not put a dimension on anywhere saying what the wall thickness is. If we had put dimensions in here showing what the wall thickness is of 4 inches, we wouldn't have to do that. But the note covers us, but it has to be included. Okay, so be sure that you have that. And here's another thing. If you recall, whenever we made the dimension style for this, we set it up where we had 1/8 inch text, but we called that dimension style arc 24, and that's because we were multiplying our 1/8 inch times 24. And so if you take 1/8 of an inch and multiply it times 24, you wind up with 3 inch tall text. All right. So if you were going to do the same thing and place text for that note, you have to make sure that this text here is 3 inches tall. It can't be 1/8 of an inch. Now that's 3 inches tall when it's in model space, right? If it's in paper space where everything is like normal size, it probably would be 1/8 of an inch. Let's double click on this, see if we can tell. So this is like 0.062. This is actually set to a 1/16 of an inch for some reason in here. I don't know why, but so if I were going to put that note in here in model space, what I would do is I would come up here and make sure that that was set to 3. So I would just type 3 and enter. And then I would start typing that note and pick close. And so the height here should match the same height as my dimension height. The height of the note should match the same. All right. Okay, so with that, again, what you're going to do, save this as a PDF and then send it to me. Now, I really don't think you need a check print on this, and I'll tell you why. If you look on page 378, you pretty much see what this thing looks like right there. I mean, that could serve as the check print. The only thing missing on that is what the title block has in it and that note that says that the wall thickness is 4, right? And so anyway, I think you've got everything you need there. Now, just to prep you for next week, if you turn to page 380, you're going to see a project. It's 9.2. It's called the FM Tuner. And it looks like a schematic, and it is. And so on Tuesday, I intend to go over this with you guys, and tell you a little bit about drawing it and what it all means and everything. So if you want to go ahead and watch the video for 9.2 and start drawing on it, you can, but you're not required to. We'll wait until Tuesday. So what I would try to do is get the guest cottage finished before class on Tuesday at 11 o'clock. All right, so now let me tell you about next week. Next week, like I said, we're going to spend 2 days on this assignment here. And then I'm going to decide whether or not we need to have just what we call a catch-up day, where we won't do anything but just let people catch up. And y'all might appreciate having one of those days. I'm going to check with the other faculty teaching the course, because we do want to keep all of our classes kind of tracking each other, so that if you miss my lecture, you could go sit in on somebody else's lecture and they'd be doing the same thing on the same day. So we may have a catch-up day next week. And then let me tell you where we are with the semester. So this is chapter 9, these blocks. We only have one more chapter left, and that's in 3D. So we're going to take a couple of class periods probably, or at least one for sure. And I'm going to go over the basics of 3D in AutoCAD. So we're going to build some 3D models and things like that. And once we're finished with that chapter, which is in chapter 10, the only thing left is the capstone project. So you can see how close we are to the end of the semester now. And so we usually give you like 3 weeks to do the capstone, right? And so anyway, we're near the end now, and we're definitely on the downhill slope. And so you need to learn how to use blocks, which is what you're going to do this week, because you'll use blocks when you do the capstone. And then the following week, like I said, we'll get into 3D modeling. There's some 3D modeling involved in one of the capstones. So that's where we are. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask. I'm going to stick around here until 12:40 today. And if I get this, if the recorder works,